Okay, at 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so go to approval of the agenda. No issues with the agenda as submitted.
Move to approve.
All right,
Support.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, so we'll move to call the public, and prior to going into that, I'd just like to introduce Doug here. He was at one of our visioning sessions during those, when we had those master plan, and I don't know, Doug, if you want to say a few words. You know.
Well, my name is Doug Lewan. I am the planning consultant with Carlisle Workman Associates. Unfortunately, Zach left us to go to work for Tyrone Township. And I've been with Carlisle Workman for 30 years and been in planning about 34 years. So hopefully I can fill in.
Thank you, Doug.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to call the public then.
Call the public, is that, or are we going to intertwine that with the master plan, or I mean, the utility scales with that? Or that could be two separate issues.
If you have something on it, go ahead, yeah.
I just got a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, yep.
I know.
Maybe we have this table, camera in the back. I'll just stand there. Scott Dietrich, White Lake Road. I saw on the news today, I'm against the field. I'm not against solar, I'm not against wind. But I saw today, not really blows my mind. They were showing a train going down the track laying solar panels in between the tracks. And it's something new there. It actually lays it down from the car, so it's flat. Okay, so I don't have a field full of them here, but I'm thinking, if they're gonna force us to put this in fields, if the state comes down on this, we have plenty of state land that runs down 23 there. If they can lay them flat, they can actually put them in the banks of where the bridges go up on the highway. They can lay, and that'll be in the state land, won't be in our, it's right on, it'll be in an area where I don't think about it anymore. Because that can be all interconnected all the way down the expressway, hundreds of miles. So that might be something you can look at too. So if they're gonna do them in the railroad tracks, like I said, I'm not against roofs. I'm not against windmills, I just want 6 million of them, but in appropriate spots. But like I said, I see there's a lot of people that are against it, a lot of people are for it, but I think, like anything else, there's a spot for it. And I was really shocked when I saw them put it, because they were talking about how you're gonna clean them when they get snow, and they said they're gonna build, they got a way to keep them clean, so I don't know. But it was really neat how the train was going along, the stuff was just coming out, just laying down. So I was getting there locking them in, so, but it's gonna be something to look into. But we don't have to worry about it here, we didn't get many trailer tracks. But they said that would handle about 2% of our energy needs, just the railroad tracks, that's a lot. Yeah, so that would probably help, but some people are against solar, so I mean, other than that, I saw that, I just thought I'd share it, whether it comes to be or not. But like I said, like I say, allowing it to happen in the township, you know, there's probably places for it, but I don't want to see a section and a half of fields of it, a bit stupid. So, all right, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
We don't have any control over how this all.
Neither. Anyone else? Oh, no? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Jeanette Ropetta, Tyrone Township. I also represent the group Tyrone Township Watch. 2 quick things. I was sorry to hear that Zach Michael left and won't be working with our township anymore. Have no idea, well, I might know how to get a hold of him now, but I just wanted, if he's listening perchance, I'd just like to thank him for all he's done for our community, for his willingness to explain things to me and others, and he will be missed. And that being said, welcome, Doug, and look forward to hearing what you have to present tonight and the meetings going forward. Second, I'd really like to thank you, the Planning Commission. I know, surprise, surprise, but I really felt like last week was a really excellent meeting. And thank you, Rich. I appreciate how you ran the meeting, the tone that you set, and the questions that you answered. And also to Ross, thank you. He did an excellent job. He, covered for Zach. You guys know this, but people that maybe weren't here don't know. But he helped guide us through some of those discussions that Zach would have been leading. So thanks again, Ross. I know it may not always seem like you guys are appreciated, but you are. And all of you that were here last week really demonstrated that you want to work with the community and engage. And I thought it was a really great meeting. So again, I appreciate your efforts. The one thing I know is that we, especially from last week, hearing you guys talk, we have a lot of things that we all agree on and that we have in common. We're not going to agree on everything, but the fact that, you can be transparent and talk about things and explain your positions, I think that just means the world to the community. I know it does to me, to just, hear how you feel about things and be able to talk about them. But most of all, so that we can discuss things early and head things off before they happen. So again, I do appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the old business, item number 1, which is master plan. And the next spot where we're currently at is the existing land use. And there were many different contexts here of what we put into the verbiage in the master plan, and then what it boiled down to. We were looking at this where we left off, and there was multiple different items that maybe certain updates we've had, and I don't know if we have a list compiled yet, but I know as a planning commission, if you guys have any ones that you've seen that are incorrect, be a good time to make a list. I know Ross, you had compiled one list at one time.
Yeah, I gave those to Zach, so he does have, Doug now has the
Yeah.
list.
And recent items that I know we can start, maybe we start at the bottom, work our way up the map, but I know the spot here at Old 23 and Fawcett was rezoned.
Yeah, probably a good way to do that is if you do have time outside of the meeting after this evening, if you have a chance to go through it, make notes, email it to me, I can send it to Doug, make sure that everything's covered.
Yeah,
And
and the
check for
only
redundancies
question I
and
had,
stuff.
Ross, is like on some of the lots, if they may be shown as vacant on it, and they may be farming
Yep.
right now. So and for the purposes of what we're trying to do, does it matter? Like this one is vacant, but it's farming is what it's being used for, because it's actually actively being farmed.
Right.
And similar to but some of them are they're farming, but they're labeled as vacant. I didn't know as a commission, what we feel on that, how we want to designate it here for us to look at. That's the only one big question I had about a lot of these parcels.
I went through a lot of that, and there aren't any huge conflicts. The ones that show vacant are literally vacant with no structures on it. Some of the ones that are green for farming residential are developed, and then the ones that are yellow within the farming residential area, those are just primarily smaller size lots that do have
Yeah.
single-family homes on them.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I found that to be accurate. There's a few areas that, we could tweak, but that's not a huge concern, I don't believe.
Yeah, and a lot of this will.
We're looking at some of the more,
So the only question I had on was this green one here, Ross, from
so that's Lake Tyrone Association-owned property.
Okay.
The green is recreational open space. It's not used for anything. It's swampland.
okay.
So I believe this is all SEMCOG data, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just got the data from the aerial, saw that it wasn't being utilized, and it's considered open space, I assume.
Why wouldn't the Bowman's Club be under that category?
Bowman's Club is technically commercial.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't we consider that a campground?
Well,
Or is it just grandfathered in?
it's grandfathered in right now. They haven't made any changes. It's been there forever.
prior to the zoning ordinance requiring anything for it.
Is that this,
Is that big red
It's the
triangle?
big
the red one right here? Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Used to be the backside of Mabley Hill. Road used to go all the way through.
Yeah, is that, yeah, that's, oh, the kind of thing like that, like, is it commercial or is that a, you know, something to talk about, that's a good point, Garrett. You know, if we're, to
It's a
be
big piece of
accurate,
land.
Yeah.
It's a, like, it's a real big piece. of
Yeah,
land.
and that's just existing use. That's not saying that something else commercial could move in there.
Right.
Because it is still currently zoned as FR. So any type of commercial use would require rezoning, and
Yeah.
the likelihood of that particular property being rezoned for, you know, a more intensive use is probably pretty slim.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, other than that, Ross, I think the only one is this, I think these are farming right now, isn't this,
Where the
I'd have to double check it, Ross, but
Where the
it's,
asphalt plant is gonna go?
no, that's, this
it's
is,
south of Town Hills.
yeah, just,
That's where that boat dealer is, there, there he
there's
is.
action here, I think, on this small lot, but then I could be mixing up my locations also. But,
So let's see, we're
right, north of Dean.
north of Dean. Okay, Action is gonna be the one right on the corner there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's two in a row.
Yeah, and then bus
Storage
behind it.
That's
Yeah,
the-
but then
might
the
be
car there, yeah.
vacant, yeah, okay.
So that, those two could be.
What about at the southeast corner of Linden and Dean, it's blue? I don't even know if that really has a,
That one I did point out to Zach. We don't know what exactly is going on, what it's even trying to designate, because it
I
doesn't- that
think it
color
just-
doesn't show up on the key.
I think it should be green,
Yeah,
but
yeah. And then there's a
The
few
light
other
green,
mixed-use
blue,
ones, like there's a property on Fawcett there that's agriculture, but it is indicated as mixed use
Okay.
because they have a lot of equipment and whatnot out there.
Is that the farm?
Callahan.
Okay,
Property.
yeah.
Linden and Dean, isn't that where that pond, isn't that pond that feeds into Lake Shannon?
There is a pond there, yeah.
And
That's
that's where it
what that
was.
parcel is, but,
Yeah, that's where our old, the guy that used to do your job lives.
yep.
There's a bunch of houses in there. Had, white.
Yeah, no, Ross, I think, yeah, well, it looks like we got a lot of, maybe each one of us have some, we could pile a list up, I know I did a few.
Yeah, if there's anything that really stands out, like I said, I did pass that information along, but I can take a look at all the comments that you provide and kind of, you know, cut out the redundancy and create one complete list.
Yeah, and then,
A lot of things.
just a comment, maybe you have some, not these commercial ones down here and here. Ross, do you know when those were established?
That one's Fenton Trading Post, that was
Yeah.
around 99, that's part of the PUD there.
that's
So
a
that's
storage, foster storage deal.
No.
That one's not on there, that's gonna show up as
That's not it?
just ag right now. No, that one is Fenton Trading Post, the trailer
What
sales
is that
there.
one then? What's that one there?
That one right there is the propane, Suburban Propane. Then the one directly south of it, I indicate should also be a commercial. That is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Derosher.
okay.
Is that Fortress?
Yes.
Yeah, these were last.
You said that's Ford, is that, what's his name?
Derosher, yeah. That needs to be commercial.
It's a
on here.
Advantage, okay.
I'll keep them for next
That's
time.
who's gonna do the block work.
I didn't tell them these, I figured we'd need them.
That's who's doing the work for the
Yes,
town.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know, I think so. The name is mentioned.
That's the Historical Society's deal lining that up.
I think they're lining
Here's the
up.
round.
She was doing it for some
Okay, yeah.
favor for the town.
Yeah, we can.
Well, I know nothing about that. Like I
Yeah,
said,
Ross,
it's all
another,
through the Historical
Yeah,
Society.
right.
Kurt pointed out,
Yeah.
recent, in the last 5 years, the Rock Church moved
Yep,
So that one
That's-
shows as vacant.
that one should be noted,
Yeah,
but
yeah, okay.
Yeah, would that change automatically, or do they have to come in and apply for a zoning change?
this is not a zoning map.
Well, it's not a zoning map, you're right.
Yeah.
This is just designating or accounting for what we already have
Yeah.
existing.
So for this, I think if all of us take time, we could probably between all of us, we could have a list of the items that we need to correct by the next regular meeting.
Yeah.
It'd probably be good, that way we continue doing this in our meetings and talking about it. But, yeah.
I got one more question. That,
Yeah, go ahead.
that lot there north of White Lake that we had Wilson in here for, Loud, up with the.
This here?
Yep.
Yeah.
What are we, I mean, I see a little square for waterways. Is that what we're designating as just the water part, or are we gonna,
Let me see what
Expand
the
that.
shows.
It doesn't have blue. There's about 4, there's like 3 that I see that are blue. It doesn't.
Oh, and there's no key.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that
like
was really odd.
that small section there, I mean, there's more water than just that. Like, what are we, even on the new map, what are we gonna qualify that? Or is that done by Eagle?
Well, again, this is not zoning or going to affect the zoning. This is just accounting for what the current uses are.
Gotcha.
So that one being vacant, I believe is appropriate. It does have a lot of RUs assessed to it. It's been designated by the township for development for many years, so.
Yeah, Gary, I think what you're saying is future land use.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Different.
Okay. Yeah, good. Point out, though. And then I think there's a couple here, Ross, I think these would be single family here, these 2 little lots. I know one of them came to the ZBA, maybe in January.
Yeah.
Maybe it was last year, I can't remember.
Those are the things that will,
But little, I'll put them in a list. But, yeah.
especially the residential stuff. that's-
Yeah. So from a timing perspective, I think we were doing this, and then the next part of the master plan was the future land use map. And that, from where we left off with Zach.
Yeah, we still want to go through the articles.
And, for sure, so, I don't know, Doug, would that be adequate to plan for the next regular meeting for us as a planning commission?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about
To go
future
through
land
those.
use. We can talk a little bit about tonight.
Yeah,
The existing land use stuff, just as a little background, there's a couple things I need to point out in the existing land use section that was provided. But first, just a little perspective on this map and how, you gotta remember, you gotta take a step back and think about how the community, how residents, prospective developers would use this map. This map, again, it's not the zoning map, it's not the future land use map. It's a snapshot map that SEMCOG has developed. We didn't develop this map. This is a map that they developed based on aerial photography primarily. And they categorize what they're seeing in aerial photography, whether it's residential, vacant, agricultural. So you're right, some of these things are very likely agricultural, but their aerial photograph didn't quite pick it up that way. They picked it up as just vacant. So we'll make those tweaks and changes. But people who use this map, this is, to me, when I look at existing land use, if I was looking at a rezoning, this is kind of the general overview of, okay, what does this part of the township look like? Okay, a lot of large lots, whether they're vacant or agricultural, it gives you a kind of perspective on what's happening in the community in that spot. Now, if there was truly a rezoning happening, we're not just going to rely on this map. Somebody, we or you or both of us are going to go out to the site, look at the site, see what's around it. If there's inconsistencies or some problems with this map, again, this is a general overview of what's happening on the ground now. Do we want to make it as perfect as possible? Yes, we do want to make it as perfect as possible, but this doesn't dictate reality. Like, we'd go out there and actually check the site. Okay, the master plan is calling this use. That's not going to really affect how we review a rezoning or a site plan or something like that. Try to make it as good as possible, but just, you gotta take a step back and think of how is this map used? It's just used to get us, a general feel for what's happening. I'll tell you another thing. We use SEMCOG now, and I'm gonna talk about that problem with using SEMCOG. But, years ago when we did existing land use maps, how we do them is we have two people in a car, we drive every road in the township, one person driving, one person taking notes, and we would actually list left side, right side, ag, single family, commercial. So you'd physically be out there running it. As you can imagine, that's a very time intensive and expensive process because it would take several days to do that. And so now to kind of avoid that expense, for many years, not just Tyrone Township, but most communities use SEMCOG. So, and it is obviously, all you do is download the information, you're done. You don't have to go and do field verify, but we would actually do windshield survey, field verify the entire community. And that's one way to do it, but very expensive way and time consuming way to do it. Now, SEMCOG is fine, again, to get this kind of snapshot of what's happening in the community. The problem, as you can see on page 9-2 of what was provided to you, is that in 2001, your previous planner, McKenna Associates, provided acreage comparison of existing land use within the township. And then in 2008, SEMCOG provided acreage comparison of what's in the township. And then in 2020, we have the new SEMCOG standards. And if you looked at this what's called Table 9.3 in this draft section of the existing land use plan, these numbers are wildly different. And the township didn't change that much. What changed is the way that SEMCOG reported these things. And so, generally speaking, if you look at 2008, SEMCOG had 5,588 acres in agriculture, and they had 16,983 acres in single-family residential. Well, in 2020, single-family residential went down to 2,961 acres the way they reported it, and agriculture went up 13,581. Well, obviously what SEMCOG did is they rejiggered this, and they put more property that was previously calculated in the single-family category into the agricultural category. And so these comparisons from 2001, 2008 to 2020 are not, they can't be compared because SEMCOG so drastically changed the way that they report this data. So unless you just want it for nostalgic purposes, the 2001 and 2008 is just not used. It's not comparable data to 2020. I would recommend just removing it, to be honest. And just kind of start off with 2020. This is what we have now. Maybe we can find, SEMCOG changed the way they did data collection probably about 10 years ago. So we might be able to find, if we can find the first year that they changed the system and compare it to now, we might have a rational way to compare it. But trying to compare it to the previous two master plans, it just looks too weird. I mean, there's obviously single-family residential didn't go down, 12,000 acres in Tyrone Township between 2008 and 2020. So that's what, as I was looking through this, I think I would propose that to the Planning Commission that we somehow make a more rational comparison. If we can find some SEMCOG data from 2010 or when they first changed this, I think that would be a better approach than trying to compare it to the previous master plans. It just doesn't work. So I throw that out there maybe as a first discussion point if you guys kind of...
Yeah, no, just a thought on that. Ross, would the assessor have any data on this?
I would not.
Based on how okay.
Yeah, not that type of data.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it provides a picture to the users of the master plan that's just not,
Yeah, it's not.
yeah, it's just not accurate. So that's what I would propose, and we will try to do that. We'll try to correct that situation. Other than that, I mean, and just a little snapshot of what's going on, I don't know if Zach ever went over this stuff with you, but we did do some acreage analysis based on what SUMCOG did provide. And I think it's interesting to note the 2020 data. If you include agricultural, rural, residential with vacant, that's 73% of the township is in rural, residential, or vacant. So it's basically agricultural and vacant. That's 73% of the current Tyrone Township. If you add single-family housing into that, it gets up to 86%. The next highest category after single-family housing is roads, so road right-of-way. And the next highest category after that is water. So if you take according to the SUMCOG data, if you take multifamily, institutional, which is this building and places like this, industrial and commercial, currently that only represents 3% of Tyrone Township. So the vast majority of the township is found in agricultural, vacant, or residential, which comprises 86%. The next highest category, interestingly enough, is basically road right-of-way, transportation, communication, utilities. So again, that's when these kind of data, these kind of numbers become useful to the users of the master plan. And they kind of you'd start to get a picture of, okay, what's happening on the ground right now in the township. And that starts to, and these numbers, I know as we go through here, there are some blank spots that were not filled in yet, but we've got a lot of this data corrected or done at this point. We just didn't provide it in the document that you have in front of you.
Yeah, there's a lot of graphs and summaries.
So, and also there's the sub areas that are included in part of your in your master plan. We've actually have that data has also been kind of crunched. We have each sub area that's been crunched as far as acreages and what's in each sub area, which will include that as well. The existing land use section, other than correcting the map, as the planning commission has pointed out, it's not, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a dry section, but it's an important section because it gives you a snapshot of what's happening on the ground right now. But it's a section that once we can all agree on all of the parcels, it's really a section that should be something everyone can agree upon. This is what's happening right now on the ground. This is kind of a dry section, and there's really not a lot to it. But there's a little work that went into it. But anyway, that's my thought.
Okay.
This is not a controversial section.
Yeah, so for this point where we're at, are you waiting on any items from us as a planning commission at this point? I just want to make sure if there is something we understand.
Yeah, just the map stuff, and we can try to correct, we can try to brush the map up, and then once we have the map brushed up, we can rejigger the acreage all the acreage calculations. But kind of, I can't imagine they're going to change a whole lot, but they'll change a little bit. And no, I think we're good. This section is pretty much good to go. Unless there's anything you guys are thinking of.
I got a question for you right up there on the overview. The way I'm looking at this, it says most common, largest increase, largest decrease, details by region, okay? Most common, for example. What are we asking on that? And I'm looking at that from the perspective, if I look at that map, the most common item on there is agricultural. But that's not where the population lives. The population lives in single family. And that's really the most common, because there are more people in single family places than there are in the rural farming. So are we asking what the largest, what the most common is where the population is, isn't it?
Well, I think what this was trying to describe is I don't think most common's probably not a good way to say it, but it was trying to say, what is we're talking about land
The land
use. This is the
Land use.
existing-
Right, you're talking
existing
about land
It's
use.
not about the people, it's about the
Yeah,
land.
this-
But,
We're talking
but there's
existing.
more people using the land in single family.
Right, but there's more area that's used.
Right, so there's two definitions there. You really need to say what it is we're asking. Is it a land use by the population or a land use expanse in the county?
Existing land use is typically acreage. It's just a description of acreage. I mean, we could talk about where residents are located. That's that's a kind of a way we could slice it to kind of show that.
You know, because I hate to pick at things, but that's a question that I didn't understand just by reading it as to what we're mentioning is the most, and the largest increase and the largest decrease. You could have 90 people move out of a house, and there could be houses, and that could be a decrease in the population. Or you could have a decrease in the land use expanse.
Yeah, that kind of decrease in population would be reflected in the existing like housing and population section.
Right, and we've had an increase in population, so I guess
Yeah, this is.
I was looking at increase on
Yeah,
it.
this typically is specific to acreage. You know, we're talking about acreage. What's the biggest acreage gains? What's the biggest acreage losses? Typically, when residential goes up, agricultural goes down, and that's the kind of trends you're trying to.
So if we had an increase in single-family dwellings, is that the largest increase in the county? Or the county, the township?
If those single-family homes took up a lot of acreage, it could be. I mean, you're gonna find increases in single-family homes in the population section of the master plan, not necessarily the existing land use section of the master plan. Like there'll be a whole description of housing and population, and people per household, and how many households, and that sort of thing.
Because we're never going to have an increase in the agricultural end of things. I mean, that's not going to increase, that's going to decrease.
That's always gonna go down. But, yeah, I presume that will all.
Right, and you're limited by, there's so much land in the county, in the township, and that's it.
Unless something converts to a.
Yeah, go from vacant to
something.
farming.
Then you would change, like if the land use of this, where the golf course is changed to agriculture use.
Right.
You would have a huge increase in
That's
agriculture.
And also.
Trending.
No, but
It's
just
not
for
just-
example.
It's
of how
not,
it
the
works.
category is not just agricultural, it's agricultural / rural residential. So if a
Right.
vacant parcel, someone build one house there, then that'll all go.
Yeah.
Right.
So residential. Well, that agricultural / rural residential.
But you could also-
So that can go up.
You could also have the gravel pits turned into lakefront property here.
That'd be multifamily.
Yeah. And
Or
that
would that be, or would that be like a?
But all this he's doing, like Doug said, you guys is showing, hey, what is currently, what is the land used for?
What's the
land.
picture?
Okay.
Not how many people are there, it's
So this
just what
is
is it used
A
for?
snapshot of today.
Of what's
The
on the
land
map.
use for today.
But it's strictly the land. We're not
Yeah.
looking at the population, we're not looking at an increase and decrease.
Snapshot.
That's in a different.
It's just a
part. We-
picture of
yes.
what the dirt looks like.
Yes, and those points that you're bringing up are important, but they're in a different part of the master plan. There'd be a whole housing and
Okay,
population.
but that's what I need to know for.
I see your
council.
point, Kurt.
Yeah.
It would have, it's under land use, but like this largest increase in land use
Yeah.
would make it. very-
Percentage by
But-
acre.
But this was just bullet points for,
Right.
exact to placehold for data to be.
Right, but what I was looking at was what data's going in there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Now it's a question, if I may. Since
Yeah,
it is a
go ahead.
workshop, since it's a workshop. What do you guys consider ag when it's residential? How large of a property does it have to be considered ag?
Well, I think this is, we don't have a,
Well, you know, you're talking ag, so I want to know all these.
no, it's not zoned that way. This was just the way, we talked about it in one of the workshops with Zach. it was just a way to say, hey, it isn't just an open lot doing nothing.
Well, should we
There's
go-
people farming on it.
Shouldn't we have a guideline, if it's gotta be so many acres to be considered ag?
Can't-
I mean, you know,
This here is just saying, hey, the use of it is agriculture.
well, that's what I'm asking. Even if it's 5 acres, if it's gotta be 10 to be ag, then it's not
Yeah,
ag.
you can't limit, that's getting into a little bit of a more specific
Why can't
discussion
you?
with regard to zoning, because there's the Right to Farm Act, and basically technically you could farm on an acre, and if you were doing
So
something,
so everybody can have a fruit stand in their yard.
well, if you are, the Right to Farm Act has no minimum acreage, and so technically you could farm on an acre, and if you could make money on the acre, you'd be protected under the Right to Farm Act.
Yeah, it's just for profit, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the parameter.
Yeah,
Now, could you actually do an acre? Probably not. So, and practically speaking, you could.
basically it's just hobby.
But you could.
Someone could have 2 acres and say they're doing herbs, which doesn't take up a lot of room. And if they're making money on that, technically they're protected under the Right to Farm Act. And they don't have to follow local zoning. They can do it. And that's,
Thanks, Doug. Any questions?
And isn't this just like a planning piece for us? This is.
Yeah, this is, just to
This is
show.
just a, yeah, this
like
is just a
Doug
tool
mentioned,
for
a
us.
snapshot.
We're not bound by this. This
No.
is just sort of a reference piece.
Tool.
this helps, so the existing land use is one of those parts that helps you develop the rest of the plan. You know, it's kind of like population, kind of like, even your public visioning sessions. You get the input, survey residents, you get the input from the residents. Okay, you got that bit of information. Now you've got the existing land use bit of information. You've got the population growth bit of information. You've got transportation bit of information. The hope is that you bring all those little bits of information and it starts to form your goals and policies of your master plan, future land use part of your master plan. And that's the hope.
Thanks. So I guess our homework as planning commission is, go through this to get and write up lists.
Just a weird question about the Farm Act. Could somebody come in on something that's completely unrelated and start saying they're gonna set a farm up there and it goes, our zoning doesn't apply to that, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Really?
So that's on food standards, septic requirements, pesticides, herbicides, seed regulations, hazardous material transportation, and charity regulations. So those are those are some of the local regulations that it
Overrides that.
Overrides, correct.
Okay.
Now, not to go down too much of a rat hole, but the Right to Farm Act also has what's called Generally Accepted Agricultural Management Practices, or GAMPs. And so if you go on the Michigan Department of Agriculture website and look, and there'll be a list of what they call GAMPs. And those are little separate PDF documents that talk about different types of farming activities. And so while not regulated by the local municipality, a farmer would have to, one, be making money to be considered under the Right to Farm Act, but they also have to meet the GAMPs. So there are things, so the GAMP standards do have things like setbacks and certain amount of area for certain kinds of animals. So the state of Michigan has kind of inserted their own rules for locals, and this is one of those preemptions of local, it's a preemption of local zoning. There's a number of them, this is just one of them.
And we did use GAMPs to model our keeping of animal standards, for those of you that were here for that.
The bee, we looked at a lot of bees and.
We modeled them based off of that, and we did include references to, account for potential changes in the future.
Yeah, good question.
I had no idea. It's like, wow, that sounds like a real
All I gotta do is sell.
end around.
So what I'm hearing, Doug, is from us, it's the existing land use map, and then for the next regular meeting, hopefully we can compile a list and maybe we can get them to Ross, then let Ross can have one list.
As soon as you can get them to me,
That's
can
what I
start
mean,
working on
yeah.
them and get them over to Doug.
That way it's one solid
Yeah, so we can
combined
start
list, not
putting together.
10 of them we all send separately, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll try to have, wherever you see a highlighted yellow section, we'll try to have that flushed out a little bit better.
So we're looking at the yellow highlights on some of these things, like 9.3 is the land use in Tyrone Township, 2001 to 2020. And you have the graphs and the summary of the land uses and changes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I've got it. Exactly, yes.
Any other questions? Planning Commission? Good job. Yes, everyone?
Not on the existing.
Okay, any on the future, Kurt? I don't see as many open spots in the future.
Yeah, the future, so I don't know, I thought it was instructive for me, because I'm kind of new here, but I don't know how people can see this or not, but this is the current future land use map from your previous planner a few years ago from McKenna Associates. And I think it's a good place to start. So, you know, in planning, in a master plan, you know, this is kind of the, I don't know if you guys can see this.
Yeah.
But this is kind of where the future land use document, you've got two really important parts of the document. You've got the goals and policies. So, and that kind of that gives the written text part of what the township's trying to accomplish. And then you have the map. The map and the text that goes along with the map. But so where the rubber hits the road is this map really, and the goals and policies. So what happens is people who use the master plan, whether it's planning commission, township board, residents, developers, you know, the first thing they're going to do is to say, what, you know, if they know what they're talking about with planning and zoning, is they're going to say, what does the master plan say? And they're not going to read your 100-page document. They're going to go to this map. And if you are, if you're taking a court on land use decisions, this is going to be a primary exhibit A. You know, now they will look at the whole document in that case. But this is going to be a very important part of the discussion. And it should be a very important part of discussion for any rezoning, PUD, anything that comes up for you guys, as well as the goals and policies. So this is your existing future land use map. And I think I was talking to Ross a little bit before the meeting. This is a certain style. And I guess we'll go through the categories. I think Zach did a pretty good job with the categories. And if you have any comments on those, we'll talk about them. But this is a certain style of master plan. I've done them like this, and I've done another style. This is, I call this kind of a more organic boundaries of a master plan. As you can see, the boundaries are not like a zoning map. They're kind of, you know, this is agricultural residential, and it's, you know, kind of amoeba-shaped area, as is most of these. A couple of these are more geometric kind of shapes, but for the most part, this master plan was set up to be non-property line specific. So, and there's pros and cons to that. The pros are that because it's not property line specific, and say there was a proposal on one of these sort of areas where it's crossing property lines, the planning commission, ultimately township board, has a little bit more discretion. Say, well, this is kind of on the border. If it makes sense, maybe you can look at either one side or the other. Or if it's even in the general area. So this has some benefits as being a little more flexible for the community. That can cut both ways though. If it's something you don't want, and there's a line that kind of goes nearby or adjacent to it, then, you know, the developer's going to say, well, it's right next door and it cuts through the property and I should be considered this designation, not that designation. So that's kind of the downside of that. The other way to do a future land use map is similar to a zoning map. So your zoning map is very specific. You know, zoning map is on the property lines. You know, it goes down, you know, Heartland Road and then takes you know, depending on what the district is, and it follows roads, it follows properties, and that's how zoning is. It's not illegal to have split zoning, but it's not common, and it causes problems. So this is, if this was zoning, there'd be hundreds and hundreds of split zone properties, because this splits a ton of properties. A little more flexible, but not specific. If we were to snap these districts to actual property lines, this map would look very different. And at that point, it gives a very specific map of where you guys might want to go. And it takes away some of that flexibility. So I don't know if you knew that about how the existing master plan map is, but I thought I would point that out and kind of get maybe your feelings about this existing way, this kind of, I call it kind of an organic way that probably, Ross can kind of maybe fill in the spaces here, but usually maps are done like this to follow natural features. There could be some woodlands or wetlands or steep slopes or something like that. That's why it's done that way. I don't know why it's done that way, but I'm guessing.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
That's what they were going for.
Yeah, and so in those kind of cases, they think we're not just going to follow, because natural features don't follow property lines necessarily, and so that's why they did it. I've seen it either way, and I just wonder what your expectation or thoughts are, knowing that this is probably the most important map in the entire master plan, and kind of what your thoughts are on that.
So what are you recommending? You're the expert.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. We've lived with this.
Yeah.
We know what the problems are with it. And that's the fact that you're right. Somebody can come in and say, well, we're right next to this, and I want to own these other pieces of land here, so we want to put this all in the development. That may or may not be the best thing for the township. But I'm wondering what kind of issues we would run into if we had it. I mean, part of the idea is the future land use map should help us reduce the number of zones that we have within the township, to bring that back to a manageable number, because we have way too many, RF, RE, RF, LK1, all those, and get that to a manageable number. That's what we'd like to do, we think, unless somebody tells us that that's crazy.
I mean, you could go, it's really your call. If you wanted more zoning districts, you could add more master plan designations. But if the goal is to reduce the number of zoned districts, then yeah, you'd want to start with the master plan.
That's kind of what we've been looking at. I know that's what Mike is looking at. But I guess the thought with that is, will that kind of a plan or map help us to reduce the numbers or not?
No, I think they're two different issues. I think you could have just as many designations with the more organic shape than you could with just snap into property lines. I don't think that's the issue.
My only comment is that in everything we've heard from the public is we want to reduce the intensity of the use across the board as much as we can. Like the Pyro district is something that's sat there for 10 plus years, and we haven't had one, I believe, application. So we're thinking about kind of taking this high use down as much as we can, and we talked about the areas where we have intense use, like the mobile home parks, whatever they call them nowadays. So we have that covered. I would like to see this done to the point that we're covered if we get into a particular legal situation. That's my biggest concern, is if we're gonna take the intensity down, that we're covered.
Yeah.
And I see like that big blue square with the orange around it. I think that should come out. As far as the organic part of it, I mean,
Yeah, no,
I leave that
the
up to
only
you guys.
thing that it helps is with this, if you, say you're a property owner, whatever you own, and you have some use you're intending for this property you bought, this doesn't give you a clear direction of what the township's intent is. Where if you go by property line,
I find that.
then you have a clearer message.
As a property owner in that area where that organic amoeba is,
Yeah.
I find that to be kind of a bit concerning, because I want to know what am I actually zoned.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, like, so if you're coming in with an application to the planning commission, and you have that map, it's not clear what our intent is as a township.
Right.
So that, my personal opinion is that it should follow the property lines.
I agree.
I don't know how.
I think
everybody
it should
else
follow the
feels.
property lines, and I think we've already talked about this with Zach. and I
We
think
did,
That was
talk about it a little
That was
bit.
Zach's recommendation.
It's easier to defend.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
that's-
like it. It's just, that's how it's gonna be in the future anyway. When this actually goes to become existing land use, it's gonna go right to the property line.
And we have, I mean, there's a lot of people in this township that own not 1, 2, 3, 4, they get up into hundreds and hundreds of acres, and they're hitting almost 3 different colors.
Yeah.
So say that gets sold somewhere down the road, or a developer comes in, and it's in that weird area, then what, we fight over 3 different colors?
Yeah, like this property here, big property, 3 colors, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's gonna be a lot easier for the developer to say, I want the residential, because it just hits the corner of it.
I mean, within reason, I've been in a lot of townships where, the zoning districts will cut through on a certain line, and if you have a piece of property, you're kind of into, because you can't, you wouldn't want, for example, industrial, if you have 100 acres to go all the way back to the back of it. If you're on, for example, Runyon Lake or Old 23, but I do agree with what you said, Garrett, that clean this up, and what everyone else said, to clean it up on the property line as much as we can.
I think that's
Yeah.
the best route.
And maybe there's some middle ground.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, where's there a combination, like in some of the areas?
I mean, there's a little bit of a middle ground on the map, the way it is, but maybe there's a way we can make it a little more black and white for people.
I think it will help, like, like you said, people don't go read our zoning ordinance. Like, Jen, they're gonna go look at a map, and then the clearer the map can be, the better it is for everybody.
They'll look at the map, maybe they'll read the goals and policies,
Yeah.
maybe.
I mean, as someone on the other side of the table, because I was on the other side of the table for 35 years, we go look at the map. And if it's close, we're like, we'll go see if we can get it through. Go ask for a variance or
If
something.
there's a loophole, you'll go for it.
And, that's
Like,
the way
there's a
it
gray
goes.
area.
Let's
Let's
go.
tackle it.
That's why we had those gray areas on
Yeah,
that.
I tell you, go down to Lyon Township or Osceola Township, and it doesn't look like it did 10 years ago, that's for sure.
So for future land use, Doug, is there any other, that was some direction there that you probably were pending from us. But I don't know if there's any other.
Yeah, no, these, Zach simply had the districts laid out, pretty
Yeah.
well. I think he did a nice job with the districts. The zoning plan on page 11-6. There were some, he kind of pointed out some of the previous master plan designations. This is a required part of of a master plan, having a zoning plan. You have to show what your master plan, what zoning ordinance, or excuse me, what zoning district specifically relates to the master plan district, which he's done here. Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts. He did, towards the end of this, on page 11-7, he talked about some special planning areas. And he had those highlighted, the golf course, the former Pyro section, and the triangle between Old US 23 and Fenton. I am still getting up to speed with some of the issues in Tyrone Township, so I don't, maybe Ross, you know what he was talking about here?
As far as these highlighted sections?
They're on the map. I mean,
Yeah,
the two, the pyro and the other section are highlighted.
The
They got
pyro, the
boundaries.
general consensus was we may want to take a look at what all of our other zoning districts allow for, as far as our M1, M2, those type of heavier use districts, as well as, the districts that may allow for office type uses, and potentially remove the pyro section and replace it with whatever seems to be more appropriate.
Yeah.
As far as the golf course area, I do not recall. I do know that he wanted to discuss a little bit more about the current designated special planning area, which is that triangle between Old 23 and Fenton. We didn't really get too in-depth on those topics. I think that he wanted to get a little bit more info from the planning commission, have a little bit more discussion on those topics.
Yeah, the only item on the golf course we talked about, I forget what its existing designation is, but was that it would be something where we zone it, that we want to keep it as
If it ever-
preservation and whatever, not, or recreational, not
It should be
that they can
classified as
sell it and
something.
become industrial or something. But I think was kind of how the discussion went, but, yeah, well.
I think we should severely reduce or eliminate the high-density residential. That's up to 8 dwellings per acre, which I just don't think fits in the township.
Is that possible to completely eliminate, or don't we
No,
need to
but
allow
we
for
still
that?
have we just don't show a space for future land use for it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the articles that, what Zach was, the data that he had for the mobile home parks in here was kind of where that was kind of geared toward, right? It was showing like if it's not in here, but the data compared to other townships, like percentage of use, and it's in the housing articles, but.
We have
That
more,
we were already
we have more
sufficiently
manufactured,
covered.
but we
Yeah.
don't have a whole lot of multifamily.
Yeah.
I mean, MHP is multifamily, but it is also kind of its own category.
Well, and we asked Zach to take a look at some things to help protect us. One was a tree ordinance. Another one was the dark skies. Another one was the mega site issue. And solar farming, we're already gonna look at here, so,
Yeah, but that's elsewhere.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's, at this point, that's all I've got.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
We'll go to old business item number 2, which is we talked about it last meeting briefly. Livingston County did a courtesy review, basically the context of it to make sure and they recommended, I don't know, there's a lot of verbiage here, but basically the summary of what we talked about in the last meeting was that we should not include FR in the permitted use for solar. So I don't know if everybody had time to look at it, but I went through it, and basically here, this would be deleted, right? The FR section. And then this here, it talks about the front yard setback and the,
Wasn't that kind of the bottom line if we got it out of there to kind of restrict it or constrict?
yeah, that was the summary of what we all
Right.
talked about, but from a,
It was really that's the only point that we really discussed. There's a lot more
Yeah.
comments in here that we kind of want to go through and get a
Yeah.
pulse on so that we can start to put together a draft document. So I would think at this point, what we'd want to do is, we did already talk a little bit about the FR, and we got that the general consensus is if that is
Yeah.
possible to remove from that district because it is allowed for in a number of other districts, then we'd want to do that.
yeah.
But beyond that, we do have additional comments that I think we want to discuss, just so, you know, we can start putting together a draft. Which won't be that difficult. I mean, we do have a good framework right now, so it's really just plugging in and removing
Yeah,
certain
and
parts.
the only thought I had was in this first section here. I don't know if you've had, Doug, any experience with this yet in any of the townships, but if you put a statement in the beginning of the let's see where it is, right here, right, under the subsection this use shall be limited to these zoning districts, let's say. Is that
It is
okay?
addressed elsewhere,
Yeah.
so if we are to do this, then we also need to amend the special land use article to,
Okay, yeah.
and various tables. if
Wherever we reference this solar.
Right.
Farm, okay, yeah, good point, Ross.
So, I mean, I can kind of go through this and bring up some of the points if you'd like.
Yeah.
So the first comments that we have here is gonna be on the second page, getting into staff comments. They're suggesting that we should clarify how the setbacks are measured in this table here, or as a footnote to this table. We do indicate it's consistent everywhere that we use the same methods of setback measurements. It is defined in Article 2 and in various other sections of zoning ordinance, so I don't know personally, I don't have an opinion either way, whether or not you wanted to add additional clarification here in this section, if it's really necessary.
As far as, are they measured from the property
From the
line
right of
or
way.
the right of, okay,
Yep.
so.
That sort of clarification, but it is all over the zoning ordinance, so. I personally don't, I feel like it's not redundant, but maybe unnecessary in this section, but I wanted to hear everyone.
Yeah, the only thing is like, okay, setbacks from water on the ordinary high water mark and then the property line, I don't know.
So it is
It's
specified in
redundant.
other areas of the zoning ordinance.
So then we're fine, yeah.
I would
would
think
see
so.
that as.
So we're thinking,
I don't know. The next one, Ross.
yeah, moving on to page 3 here. We have a comment that the township reevaluate including FR. That's the one that we did discuss already, and I got that the general consensus is if that's an option, then
Yeah,
that's what we would want to do.
okay.
So page 4 just continues on the intent of the zoning districts. They just go on to comment that PCI and some of the Pyro districts, specifically Pyro B, Pyro C, would be more suitable than the FR type zoning district.
Yeah.
We have a comment here regarding the category of PUDs. Use of PUD process and encouraged for sites larger than 20 acres. Typically, utility solar facilities are much larger than 20 acres in area and provide additional flexibility to the development and design process and further enable coordination among various on-site uses. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, on the PUD aspect of it.
Hey, Ross, I got a question. I didn't see it in here, but, you're talking about a lot of hard surface now. I didn't see anything in there on like detention basins or retention basins or something like that. Yeah, because
Yeah, it gets into drainage.
it does, okay, I'm not so zoned out when I was reading through it, but yeah, because that seems like you're putting a lot of hard surface potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this section,
Hey Doug, I got a question too. I mean, are you seeing people, districts, communities fighting this much, or has that not come up yet?
Yeah, there's some communities, definitely communities fighting it.
Yes.
There's a couple communities that see that the huge utility scale ones are, can really change the character of the community. And some communities are more positive towards a little smaller scale, like 20 acre and smaller. But when you start getting into like 1,000 acres, that, people are, concerned.
Saginaw Township is one of the
Obviously.
ones that's fighting, so is Birch Run
Yeah.
too.
So, but
And
yes.
Conway and
Yeah.
Cohocton.
But the stormwater runoff thing isn't necessarily as big of a problem as you might think, because there's nothing underneath them, and the water's just running off the panels and going on the ground where it was going before. So it's not as if there's a concrete base, they're just stuck in the ground with poles. And so the water runs off the panel, hits the ground, it's where it was going, it's where the water was going anyway, and so it's then just absorbing into the ground like it was before. There's really not much additional.
It doesn't change it from a agricultural code, I mean, John, this is your expertise.
Well, I mean, it's almost like, if you think about like a parking lot is mostly impervious, but then they have, you put some of this impervious where it can go through the parking lot, it's almost like that. I mean, it's, how big are the panels, like 10 feet or something?
Yeah. And they're on an angle, and they're only sitting in the ground with posts, and so it's grass or whatever, it's not paved or trampled down. So
Seems like, to me, it's just, empirically, it's just dumping a lot of, it's like coming off a roof, I know.
But you still have,
Rain comes off, it comes off
below that, there's still
grass.
impervious area.
Yeah, it's just going.
It's mostly, I mean, there's a foundation and stuff, but it's not like a parking lot going.
Yeah. It's going where it was going before. It's just, it's not, the problem with impervious surface is that it channels it to a spot through a catch basin and a pipe, and then that's shooting out at, high rate and causing erosion or causing, this doesn't do that. It's just, the rain is still falling, and it's falling in that same spot, and it's just absorbing into the ground where it was absorbing in the ground before. It's not collecting. The water's not, shouldn't be. If it's collecting, they're doing something wrong.
Well, on the other hand, though, it could prevent the grass from growing.
Sure,
right?
have the grass,
And the grass isn't growing, and then,
grass-
this
this isn't gonna be growing, so.
stops the soil erosion.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if the grass dies, but it's still gonna absorb into the ground to a certain degree. But I haven't seen that, put it this way, I haven't seen that as a substantial issue.
So it sounds like, based on what I'm hearing, that Ross would probably want to exclude it out of FR. So it's not a permitted use there. And then, Doug, have you seen other townships amending?
Yeah. In fact, they gave us an example. I don't represent these communities, but later on in this report from the county,
No.
they provide.
I know they mentioned those in there. I just didn't know if you've been involved with any
I have
fresh ones that.
I've been involved in a couple ordinances, but this is Marion, the example they gave is Marion Township and Handy Township. And we apparently did both of those, and they did overlay districts. So they tried to concentrate them into certain parts of the township.
So more specific than.
Yeah, the benefit of an overlay district is that you don't have to say solar is permitted in the pyro district. You could say, or whatever district, you could say solar is permitted in this area that the township designates, and then that overlays on top of other zoning districts. So it's not, if you say, just like the agricultural district, that opens up the entire town. You don't want to open up the entire township. So that's the benefit of an overlay. And I think that's what the county was sort of giving as an example of something that could be a little more restrictive.
I think one of the reasons that they want to do that is if you read on page 4 here, where they get into some of the, hey, you allow this in pyro, but you don't have any property currently zoned pyro. I think adding the overlay district might reduce issues that may present themselves based on that. Because, they are suggesting that, hey, we should potentially initiate some rezoning of lands to have pyro districts. We need to kind of weigh how we want to tackle this, because in our master plan, we're considering removing the pyro district and amending other zoning districts to accommodate those types of uses if they don't already exist in some
Well, we
zoning.
can't rezone it, we can just put it as a future land use, as a potential.
We can initiate rezoning.
You could do zoning.
Yeah, so we can.
We have done that. Yeah, we've done that for some PCI properties along 23, but for whatever reason, the township never even talked about that for pyro.
Okay.
So that's a big discussion that we do need to have and determine, because we could, replace these pyro districts with, say, M1, M2, heavier industrial districts, which allow for some of the same uses as would pyro B and C.
Yeah, and what I would think, Ross, and for the point we're at in our process of master planning, and is that, this is my thought, is remove the FR district from the current zoning ordinance that we have, that we're looking at, and then, once we have the master plan finished with the future land use map, then that would make sense that, hey, we removed it, now this solar zoning needs to be amended to show current zoning
So
districts.
amend
Where we would
amend it
allow.
now and then amend it
Yeah,
in the
because
master plan.
my thought is that we would mix these two issues, and then it would they would both slow each other down from actually happening, but that's just my thought, I don't know how you guys feel, but if we mix the two, solar and the master plan, future land use map together, then they would both maybe drag on, right? Because how you're saying, Ross, is technically we're trying to eliminate pyro and use some other zoning classification.
Which would require
Which we would
this
have
section
to-
again.
Put whatever that new classification is into this ordinance, right?
Yep. So we can do that. I mean, the intent of this, the reason that we requested the courtesy review was just to make sure that, you know, everything's as tight, as neat as it can be right now, just in case a developer were to come in or a utility company were to come in and propose something. We can always revisit it at a later date, especially if we're going to be changing our zoning designations. But while we're doing this, I still want to try to go through and incorporate as many comments as you
Yeah.
see fit. So beyond that topic, which is something that's going to require a lot of discussion, something a little bit easier to swallow is the height. All that they're suggesting is right now we require that no mounts, any parts of the system exceeds 15 feet in height. They made a comment here that we should include an exception for lightning rods, those sort of features that are necessary for these uses, but would exceed 15 feet, obviously, to be effective. So that's really the biggest thing that they're suggesting with that is make sure that we account for, you know, specific features that need to exceed 15 feet in height.
And on that one, Ross, like, I think, can't remember, I think there's somewhere in there, here where we say that they need to protect for lightning strikes, etc. I can't remember where it is in this.
I wonder if that's a general exception.
But it would make sense that we would waive that requirement for something like a safety related.
I was just saying that that might just be a general exception for any
Yeah.
use, you know, for any building.
It should be, but is
Yeah.
it, was the question.
Yeah, true, Ross, good point.
I don't think there's any lightning. No mention of, no, here we go.
It says you should have it,
Yeah.
lightning protection measures.
Yep,
Yeah.
we do have that, but it
It
also
doesn't
says,
say, it also says you can't be over 15. and-
yep. So just clarification on that, that yes, you do need to have that, and yes, that specific feature could exceed the 15 feet.
Yeah, I guess the height of the other protection equipment, this is the solar energy system, so is that part of the system? That's where you get into the.
Yeah, I mean, it is. But that's the only instance of lightning in the zoning ordinance, with the exception of definition of catastrophic event, which
Yeah,
has nothing to
yeah.
do with that. So, for now, we may want to incorporate that, but we should also keep it in mind that we might want to consider that just in the zoning ordinance in general, to allow for an exception in height.
Oh, for other.
Yeah, for anything else that may require lightning protection.
Most of the recommendations were spot on as far as I was concerned, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they have some good points here. The next one is screening. Basically, they're requesting that we elaborate on that a little bit further and make it more descriptive. And they did include an example. So, I don't know what your thoughts are on the example, if you're okay with that as kind of a plug-and-play type thing, or if you wanted to modify that at all, or ignore it.
I think this, what they've put in here is similar to some of the recent applications, what we've asked for from applicants, right? We've asked them to not have all one type of tree, you know, and.
Which we can do.
multiple different. So I think what they've recommended here is good, my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel, but we've done this on a few different applications that have come to the planning commission. Yeah.
I think this could apply.
Yeah, we've
We
done.
could add that to every section, every
Yeah.
special land because.
But is
Yeah, I
that
agree.
stuff on a berm, or is that just flat ground?
Everything that's too high.
Yeah, and we didn't even have to pay to have them do this.
It doesn't say, it just, I
So
think.
if you have 15-foot
For the
tall
planning part of
panel, and you have 6-foot planted tree, then
Yeah, no, that's where I think, Rasta, that was my point, Garrett, like, you could, it should still have that, up to the planning commission discretion.
For which?
This screening
landscaping?
one, right, so that way we don't lose that, because, to Garrett's point, right, if you have a 6-foot high screen and your panels are.
panel. Give me a 12-foot berm and then a 6-foot tree on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're always gonna see them.
We've done that for other places, it seems like.
Yeah.
Well, just as a special land use, which this falls under that category, the planning commission does have
Yeah.
the ability to modify certain standards
Yeah.
for all of them, including some of the specific design requirements for specific uses. So we can include something like that, but it may not be necessary. Next big point here we have is, well, included in that, we have landscaping and maintenance plan. There's glare, they comment. Township should require that the applicant provide a glare study, which is not something that we currently require. And they do have some suggested language here
Yeah, I think.
as far as a definition for glare study.
Wise, right? It'll be a big part of the conversation if this ever becomes an application.
They talk about solar radiation just above that, but they don't highlight it in the permit.
I'm not coming here yet.
They're on their way.
We're just making sure we cover all bases in case they come.
Okay, so batteries and equipment, their recommendation is, they recommend against permitting on-site battery storage for safety and welfare of local residents and emergency response personnel. So they kind of are suggesting that we allow for battery storage off-site is what I'm gathering. I don't fully.
Yeah, the only thing there, I think their recommendation seems like it's wise, right, that it's not stored there because it isn't a normal thing you deal with. That's whatever fire stations that, but does that mean then you have, well, how does it go off-site? Do they have to run underground?
I don't know what that would entail.
Just
On the lines.
not on that site, that'd be a whole nother issue.
So they would have to run lines in and out. So
Well,
maybe-
it just
You might have
goes-
easements.
Goes down the power lines and they'll store it somewhere else.
Does anyway, they'll just store the batteries in the
Yeah,
site and it sits
yeah.
there.
No, it just goes on the line, yeah.
I would think they wouldn't.
I don't think we want battery storage there. I was involved with something in Lyon Township where they had a battery facility there, and they actually had the building they were building had these things that they could hook onto and drag the battery packs out of the building if they caught on fire to put them out in the parking lot. It was absolutely insane, the amount of
Yeah.
fire suppression they had to have at this place. I don't think we want to have anything to do with batteries.
So we want to
I agree.
prohibit that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those lithium ions, once they start on
Agree with the
fire,
recommendation.
very hard to put out.
Just bring your marshmallows
Jeez, yeah, an 8-hour fire,
Not with those fumes.
Not those.
yeah,
for a 3-day fire.
a 3-day fire.
Okay, natural resource preservation, we do have some suggested language here, which would require an environmental impact analysis, which,
Yeah.
you know, I assume everyone would be on board with.
Yeah. Agreed.
Then they also make a comment here, other types of analysis, beyond the ones listed there, may be a benefit to the township. They've been utilized in other ordinances. They have a suggestion here for a wildlife impact analysis. So I think we want to talk about how you feel about that.
Seems like, I guess maybe you could differentiate, but it seems like it would be part of the.
Not necessarily, it's kind of,
It's different, yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit above and beyond the typical environmental impact. So they do have a number of recommendations there. In addition to the wildlife, they also have provision of manufacturer safety data sheets on site. Documentation that shall include the type and quantity of all materials used in the operation of all equipment. I assume that's part of what we would want included in the use statement, but adding this language would just kind of reinforce that. What do you think about that one?
Agreed.
Fire suppression plan, I don't think there's gonna be any opposition to that. I think that's very important. Construction schedule, that's likely something that would be covered, but it wouldn't necessarily hurt to include it if you think that's a good idea.
What about the actual construction of these panels being put in the ground? I know you said these poles just go in the ground. Like, are we talking concrete pads, or are we talking, you know, like, are these, I mean, these are 15 feet tall, 10 feet. I'm guessing they're fairly thin, kind of, you know, like, is wind an issue with this? I mean, we get heavy winds around here sometimes, and these things just gonna take flight like a kite, and
Should be designed by a structural engineer.
that's what I'm getting at, like, they should be in concrete, you know, so they, I mean, we get some pretty good winds around here. I mean, you gotta think
They all
about it,
need
you
to
get
be
your summertime
yes.
storms,
And
then you
reviewed,
got panels flying everywhere.
reviewed by a building official or building.
Yep.
Okay.
And that goes on to.
I don't know if wind should be a study, I mean, we're talking about impacts from,
I think there's standards for that, which,
Okay.
you know, would be reviewed through Livingston County to verify compliance. And the next point here is permits from the road commission and MDOT to connect access roads to existing county roads. I don't see why we would not ask for that. I think that's pretty important. Obviously, those entities need to be involved because they have jurisdiction over that. So they would have to regardless, but it doesn't hurt for us to include that in those standards as well. The next one, a complete set of photos and video of the entire development area prior to construction for historical documentation, so the township can secure and refer to once the time comes for decommissioning and redevelopment as agricultural or other types of uses. That's an interesting one. What are your thoughts on that?
That's what they do when they do like road construction. You see those guys going down the road and they videotape the road as they're doing it before they come back to make sure that, you know, oh, my landscaping had a front. They said, no, you didn't.
To me, it's good, it's
I
very
think
simple for them
the
to.
more they cover us, the better.
Yeah.
I can say every recommendation so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything that
Yeah,
they're, that isn't
just
good. Most of these are
covering
good.
us.
They're scaring us.
And with drones, it's so easy to do stuff like that.
Okay, moving on to drainage and stormwater, which we talked about a little bit. We do have some standards here. They made a comment that to ensure compliance with the provision, township should require that the applicant or developer provide a stormwater study. So just an additional study that would be required for this type of development. And we do have a recommended language here as far as how we would demonstrate that.
The county drain commission will probably be involved in that.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. it sounds like the county's already got a pretty good idea of what they want to see. Is there a study that has been done that we could maybe get a copy of to see what it looks like?
I'm sure we can
If
find something.
if you can get one and just send it to us just to read through it.
Yeah, you're talking about specifically like environmental.
Well, if they were gonna go to
examples of
another
all this.
area, what they presented, just so we
Yeah.
can read through it?
Is there example, like, I guess, simple question, is there others in the
Yes,
county?
yes.
Was like in the
Or
far
another
northwest, right?
county.
Was that township in the far northwest?
There's a huge proposal going on right now in Conway.
Conway.
Yeah.
It's
There's a
huge.
huge field of them somewhere
Yeah,
around
there
here,
is as
because
well.
we've driven past it.
Down by, going towards Ann Arbor, where the highways all merge, they got them all along the highway there.
But the Conway one right
Yeah,
now.
that's really big.
But an existing
Pending.
proposal,
So
proposal.
an application.
Yeah, a complete application. It'd just be worthwhile reading through it. Because I'm especially interested in this runoff thing. It doesn't make sense that it's not gonna be close to at least a gravel driveway. A gravel paved surface. I mean, you got some grass in
Well,
there.
either way, we're saying that they need to provide that study,
Yeah, I'd like to.
and we'll see what the study says.
0.4 CFS or something, what are you thinking?
I don't know, they say they gotta hire an engineer to do the study. And to not require engineered solutions, so it just drains in naturally.
Right.
Well, we got a lot of hard clay ground around here too, so. If the grass ain't gonna grow there, then it's gonna run off.
Russ, the only thing I think, most of their, it sounds like we agree with what the county recommended. The only question I had is on fencing.
Okay.
Is that addressed? I don't know if I missed it.
We have there's landscaping and screening requirements
Yeah.
for buffering. As far as actual fencing goes, let's see.
I imagine no fencing in, you don't want people walking around.
Because I don't know.
Okay, so.
It should be secured site.
Secured site, is how they say it, okay.
Oh, is it? No, I didn't.
I didn't know if that, that's what I was just trying to see.
That's my belief.
It should be, yeah.
12-foot fences. 12. Fine, well, you want to keep deer, you want to keep the deer out there. The deer fence, get the deer, you might make some damage.
No, I know the one on 96, off of 96 towards Novi, there's always deer in there, and the grass is fine underneath, and they have to mow it. It's a DTE, I think it's an advertisement basically for DTE. It's not a huge one,
It looks like
but it's, but there's always, but the thing I'm concerned with is you create an area for this right to be, hey, kids, whatever, playing in there.
So, yeah, in regards to fencing, it does state in their recommended text here for screening and vegetation that in lieu of planting a green belt or decorative, in lieu of planting a green belt, a decorative fence that is at least 50% opaque and meets the requirements of the ordinance applicable to fences may be used if approved by the planning commission.
Yeah, so that's for screening, not for security. That would be optional, but I think it's something that either we can just
But I think,
look at it.
yeah, as part of the special land use.
Yeah, or-
Yeah, okay. Makes sense.
Well, the best part's on
But
that's
or-
the last page here anyway. Says we can get a grant for up to 25 grand
That's
for
a lot of
rewriting
money.
or managing the renewables and sending postcards to residents for planning processes, support for public meetings and stuff like that.
That's not.
We got another 2 months to get in a request.
Could we get that in? Legitimately?
Well, instead of paying out of our pocket, paying the consultant to help us with this.
What, just put it together, the draft?
And I think when,
That's what it's saying, right?
yeah, but, I don't know.
I was reading, I kind of missed that last point.
The second to last page, it says you can get a grant for up to 25,000 bucks.
Yeah, we got anybody that writes grants that works here?
You should.
Take a
I bet
shot
you should
at
give
it.
us a good example right there. Jennifer Crawford,
It's for
Jessica Crawford.
renewable energy, it's.
Well, no, but we're writing.
We are.
We're writing this for them. If they wanted
It
it,
is.
here's the requirements.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, They're making us.
Ross, I don't see any.
And also in here, everything it says is, for your legal fees and all that. That can go to our legal fees, instead of paying the lawyer to review all this out of our pocket.
Planners and all the professional expenses, it makes sense.
And then we can have a party afterwards
So-
for getting it done.
Ross, do you have any questions from us?
I mean, if you guys are okay with this and you just kind of want to create a draft with all of these recommendations incorporated,
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything
myself
or.
Yeah, I like that.
I would say that's the best option, and because our ordinance is good how it is, but some of these things that
Would be
make it more
better.
specific, it would help.
Well,
I don't
in here,
know.
there's some things, options, they said like the overlay, or just if we eliminate FR, is that what we want, do we think that's good enough? I mean,
I think that's our big
I
question.
think an overlay is something that we will want to consider. but
Yeah, that's what I'm
right
saying,
now-
overlay, we can say we want it here or not here.
Yeah.
I think we should do, my opinion, my vote would be to do both. Put it where we want it,
Well, if we do the overlay, then we'll just draw it where,
Yeah.
but, yeah, is that good enough?
Yes.
Is an overlay sufficient? You don't need, okay, then fine.
Then I would recommend if that's the route that we want to take, then we should probably have Carlisle Ortman put something together for that, because we don't have any existing overlay districts, and I don't have a whole lot of experience with that.
Do you guys write grants? I mean, is this something you guys could write for us, take care of it for us?
We do help communities write grants, mostly for recreational kind of stuff, but we've not done one of these grants. But yeah, we've got a guy on staff that has done grants for us.
Well, you got 60 days basically to get this in, to even see, I don't know, the money may not even be there, I mean,
Yeah.
It's renewables, the money will always be there.
How much does it cost to do it?
but it doesn't cost us anything to ask.
So
Yeah, it costs to write the grant, how much?
Yeah.
25 grand.
It costs us nothing.
Money's free.
So the
Loophole there.
Yeah.
So the overlay district, you guys, if we did that,
If that accomplishes the same thing, that's
no,
all for it.
in a realistic situation, how long would that take to get done?
Well, so the standards so the way I understand, the standards that the county has given you comment on, you're all pretty good with that. You're good with that. And so this would just, in essence, this language would become an overlay district standards. So then the only thing we have to really discuss is where the overlay is going to be. That's the big issue.
Yeah.
So the language looks pretty good. Everyone's in agreement in the language. But in association with language, you would reference, the overlay district map. That would end up in your zoning ordinance. And so that would be where a lot of the discussion would occur, is where do we, if we're taking it out of the ag zone, where are we going to focus this at? Where do you want to focus? And you'll see there's a couple examples at the end of this document that the county provided that shows two examples. One, as I mentioned before, one in Handy and one in Marion, that provides, two examples of how you could do that.
So the grant money that's available is basically for legal review, for whoever's gonna write the grant and all that kind of stuff. Publication in the newspaper and, free beer at the public hearing. I don't know. Could it?
Apply to all expenses related.
So if we did an overlay district, my concern here is.
we're not gonna have an area where we're
Is
gonna.
if we wait to define that area, and maybe it takes us 3 months, depending on what happens at the next few meetings, or we don't know, that then we still are open in the FR zoning district for an application.
Yeah.
The whole time we work on it. That's,
We kind of
for us
create
to.
two separate drafts, I think.
So that was.
We could suspend
Yeah.
taking applications.
Yeah.
As long as there's none on the table, right? Which I don't believe we would have heard about it.
So that might
Just my.
be something
Yeah.
we want to.
That's something that we want to talk about.
Complete the overlay?
That would buy us a little bit.
Or until we
more time
complete
to
the
get through
revisions
that.
to this ordinance.
Well,
Whether it's
Vote on that
overlay or.
you
No.
could suspend
This is
for
a workshop.
Okay.
90
Yeah,
days
right, right.
and renew it for another 90 days.
That's a great suggestion.
Now, the other thing with the overlays, then we do gotta say, here's where we would want it.
Yes.
And now, where are we gonna put that is gonna be outside of FR? You know, where would we want it?
Kind of in the old pyro, I'm thinking.
No, but that's almost the reason to have an overlay, because, I mean, that was kind of your reasoning to have an overlay, because if you exclude it from FR, the only place really with large parcels is in the pyro area.
Yeah, I mean,
Which is all zoned FR currently. I
Yes.
mean, for these, there would need to be rezonings, whether it be by the applicant or the township
Yeah.
initiating rezonings, or if you go with the overlay route, you wouldn't necessarily need to go through the rezoning process. And it may cover some FR land, but it would be area that is identified by the township as appropriate for that type of use.
yeah, you would still go through a rezoning process, because a overlay is a rezone, it's a district. But if you're impacting, so I'll just leave it at that, it's still a rezoning. You still have to go through
Yeah, so in essence, I think Kurt's recommendation maybe is wise, right, to have a moratorium on it.
Yeah, that's something I think.
I think would be wise, so that way we don't,
That's not something that.
you know, tonight we can't do, but I think it should be.
That's something that the
The board has to do.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We would agree. Do we have to request it in a regular meeting, or can we?
Board can
We
initiate
just,
that.
okay.
The board's got a meeting
From
next
our planning,
Tuesday.
from this workshop, or can't we recommend to the board from?
We just tell Kurt, send it up to the board.
Yeah, that
It's
doesn't
just a
require a
request,
formal-
it's not a formal.
That's why he's on here.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically you would have the township attorney kind of help draft that language.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it'd be for certain, like 6 months, you could do like a 6-month moratorium, and you have to have a reason for the moratorium, and the reason would be that we're initiating discussions to, amend the ordinance, and upon adoption of the ordinance, the moratorium be lifted, something like that.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, okay.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's a wise bit for us, as homework would be, hey, where would be the overlay district for all of us to think at and look at?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one, that property. Yeah, they're gonna.
Okay, so, any other questions from the board for the solar facilities for tonight?
That's what you do.
Okay, any other guidance you need, Ross? I think we're good. A lot of discussion, but make sure you're all set.
All right, awesome.
Okay, any new business, Ross? Ross, do you have anything?
That covers it.
Yeah, that is, yeah, so, okay, we'll go to call to the public. Go ahead, Scott. Stand up.
All right, I got a couple of things to talk about here. First of all, you guys were mentioning, Ross was saying something about taking the pyro to heavy industrial. I don't know if we were wanting to go that route, because I think we were discussing about that when I heard about asphalt plants and stuff. Is that heavy industrial? I don't know, but
Yes.
we gotta be careful about that one. All right, you guys aren't privy to this shit. I don't know if you've been up to date. You are, Kurt. Gentleman came in the other day with the woodworking down there in Center Road. That's gonna be falling under the home occupation. He mentioned
No,
vendors.
that's agribusiness, it's special land use.
He's already got a home
He
occupation.
has a home occupation.
Okay, fine. Oh, so he's running under home occupation now, that's fine. Okay, he's talking about having events now. In events, he's talking about calling vendors in. We really need to narrow down. It's one of I don't think it's right to have one person have a right to do business on their property and bring other people to sell the products there in a residential area. I mean, he's got a lot of, I went down there, there's a lot of houses, and I know a lot of those people down there were really up in arms over the barn there on the corner having the weddings. And I talked to one of the guys the other day after we had the meeting, and he's gonna put the word out. Like I said, I don't know who's gonna be down there or not. My other big thing is, we have him here, he's talking about a sawmill, he's got 35 acres. He's only got so much wood there. He's talking about bringing more wood for woodlands he claims are his. Come on. Realistically, is it really his, or is he buying logs from somebody else? We don't know. But that kind of operation he's bringing trucks in with logs, we gotta make sure that that goes into an industrial area. Not a, it's gotta go in a complex where he's running a sawmill. He's got all the house, I don't care if he's got insulated walls, he's gonna have a lot of noise over there, trucks coming in and out, hauling in logs, they take a big truck. So you guys are gonna have that coming to you. But I'm really worried about people having a business in their place and just having an event and having everybody else come bring a tent up and sell them and going through his right to do business there. We need to stop that. Let's see. I think that's all I got, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. More comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Jeanette Lopetta, Fuller Drive. So that was the ordinance then, right? That you were talking about, Steve, that we needed last meeting? Wasn't it you that said that we need to tighten it up right away? Anyway, that's the ordinance having to do, that you would be.
The solar
Yeah,
facilities.
what's in there is our
That's all
ordinance
of it?
with staff comments
Okay.
from the courtesy
From the-
review.
Okay, from the courtesy review. Okay, cool. I figured it was, I just wanted to make sure that covered the whole thing. So 2 points I was gonna ask you guys to consider tonight, and one of them, well, first of all, there's several Michigan communities that have put up moratoriums, so you guys know that, and that was what I was gonna ask you to do. And some of them are for over a year long, and they're still going on. So I would hope that you go for the max, because we need to really make sure that we get this down good. And this would trigger a public hearing, would it not? Okay. Also, there are Michigan communities, I know we heard this last week, where we were told, no, you can't refuse this. There are several Michigan communities out there that have flat out said no solar, utility scale solar. And they're not being sued, and they have said no. So if you want, I can do that research for you guys, but I hope you would look it up. And did you, any of you guys look at the information that I think her first name was Stephanie, that she provided you guys? Okay, so I looked at that also. Also on the weekend, I took a drive out to Cohocton and Conway Townships, and I spoke with a couple of residents and business owners out there. Their communities are covered with no solar. It kind of gave me nightmares. It reminded me of the asphalt plant thing here. But their communities are covered with these signs. So I asked them about the current plan, and I don't know if you guys know, but it's 1,500 acres. And do you know how much 1,500 acres is? That's 2.5 square miles, basically, covered. Now, do we have that here? And that was the big thing that was said last week too, don't worry, we don't have that. No, we don't have that. But that's not the point, that they string pieces of land together. So we know that that's something that happens. It's farmland that's gone forever. It's an eyesore that people have to look at. It doesn't matter how high you make these fences, and so you still come up over hills and you see all of this, so fine. But what the residents told me was they felt like they're being forced into this, and that their leadership did not do enough to prevent it from happening. And now they're finding out and seeing other places that are saying no, and it's perfectly fine to say no. So anyway, you guys might say, well, we don't have 2.5 acres of vacant land. We do have a lot of land that can be linked together, and I honestly believe that we're in danger of this. Now, a lot of people think that this is fine to have this kind of development. Again, this person that handed you a piece of paper last week, there was some very interesting things in those videos, and they were by industry, well-respected scientists. And the environmental concerns are enormous, and they, as I kind of shut it out, they talk a little bit about the radiation here. They're not telling you about the radiation here. You gotta look into this. This is incredible.
Yeah, that comment is in the current ordinance, that radiation portion.
Yeah.
It's in our current ordinance,
And
just so you know.
what does it say?
It's about restricting the solar radiation.
Okay, how do they restrict it?
But, no, it was just in.
It was very vague.
It's very vague,
Yes,
but
okay.
good point. I just
Okay.
wanted to let you know that's where it
Okay,
is.
all right. So we need to look at that, the environmental, look, we all have kids, grandkids here. This is, this is so bad. Okay, so the environmental concerns, Also, let's just even think of the humanity concerns, okay? And this brings me to the kids. Amnesty International says the marketing of these state-of-the-art technologies are a stark contrast to the children carrying rocks in bags. And that is a fact. That is happening, not in our country, but it's happening in other countries, and I care about those kids too. And they're working to fulfill what we want. This is not good. The economic concerns, again, look at the world's biggest battery factory, Tesla, in Nevada. It would take 500 years for that factory to make enough batteries to store just 1 day's worth of America's electricity needs. And so we've been having this push for wind and solar for 20 years, billions of dollars of subsidies, and we're still only at 3% because it's not working and it's not viable. So these facts, just a couple that I mentioned, are only the tip of the iceberg. If any proposals come our way and the township feels like they have to consider them, I think that there's going to be a big force to reckon with the public. And I know you all remember the asphalt plant fight. And we floundered a bit at the beginning, but we were successful. And if you thought you saw signs then, you're going to see them. You'll see them for something like this. People do not want this. I do believe that many of us agree on this. I know you guys know what the economic, the environmental, and the humanity type, the things that are wrong with doing this. I also know that many of you on the commission are aware of the myths that are being pushed down our throat about fossil fuels, that they're bad, that they're gonna run out. I know a lot of you know that, so I hope this commission can also be kind of that vessel to help educate people. We don't need this, and it's being pushed down our throat, not by you guys, but I'm saying by government, by state, whoever's doing this pushing. There is money in it for someone, and it's horrible, horrible stuff. Take a look at the radiation effects from this stuff. You do not want this coming to our township. So I hope you'll look into it more. I will do some more research, and I'll put together some links and stuff. I will send them to you, Rich, and if you would distribute, I'd appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Guys, do you have an extra copy of that handout you referenced from last week?
It's right here, just we got.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Okay, any other public comment? All right, seeing none, any miscellaneous business? No, all right. Move to adjourn. Thank you, guys. Appreciate
So about the solar stuff, talk to Mike about it tomorrow, see if they're gonna consider that moratorium. Which time we can kinda go from there on how we want to proceed.
Or just, if you want, just to make sure, tell Ross.
No, I mean, from last week I just.
I think after a while.
I didn't bring my computer.
Yeah, you get used to having it. They used to give us a thing when you got it. Yeah, like, they don't have to be sitting here.
No, I brought it back, my computer, I was like, I don't need it once.
At one point, he was kind of asking us about the hard job.
Yeah, he was like, grandson, they came over for the first time today, so.
They're kind of a little distracted.
Please bring them, because I would love to.
I just wanted to get all. But I'm still like, I've been tough. I put my complaint about the gondolas for one thing. I just can't believe Scotch is. That's one thing.
Oh, it's still an open.
Some,
It's holding off on the expansion out there.
You don't know.
But it's something that's a critical health and safety issue.
Nobody knew.
Because next month.
It's 10 years ago.
Before they get approval of anything.
Yeah, one guy.
See you again.
And one company with all the. It's kind of one company out there.
which it was not for, the contract is for.
Yeah, but there's more than one business. No, that's what I brought up tonight. So it's, I'd like to do a business there. Shouldn't give them the opportunity to have other businesses operating on the same property.
So good, so I mean, no offense,
So it just gets out of hand.
and do they get taxed like utility easements and all, or? Okay. I mean, if it provides the tax easy, if they don't have the money, it might be a good thing for them to put it in there.
The other thing we're trying to do too, we have 2 gravel pits. Both are in the sewer. And we don't want them turned into Michigan Adventure.